Thank you, Madam President. Yes, Edward Snowden is a hero, and he is a hero for all of the reasons that were very clearly enumerated on this side. He stood out from the crowd at great personal risk to his own life and limb, and he told truth to power. And that's enough in my book. If you look at some of the charges that have been made on the other side, they simply don't stack up. He fled to Russia. He didn't flee to Russia. He was actually trying to get to Ecuador when his passport was removed. Was he ever likely to come to the United Kingdom? Was he ever likely to come to the United Kingdom when his own revelation showed that our own security services were just as much out of control as those of the United States, and where our own extradition treaty with the United States is one of the weakest that we have with any other counterpart? Take the other point. Did he go too far? Well, Charles Vaughan himself, the honourable member, made very clear that he had released only 1% of the total documentation that was available to him. I think it was a proportionate response. There may have been some issues which were of concern to the security services, not many in operational terms, not many. But what he did get, yes.
He released 1% to Glenn Greenwald from The Guardian. He's relinquished his control over that. He has no control over what is going to be released in the future.
The Guardian has a very honourable reputation over many years of making sure that it does not breach issues which are going to lead to a loss of life. And you cannot point to any, and I've had conversations privately with members of the security service, you cannot point to a single article that the Guardian published which can be said to have endangered anyone in the British or American security or secret services. And I think that's absolutely... There's another implicit assumption on the other side, which is that somehow what Edward Snowden has done is to have provided a gift to the autocrats around the world, to Russia and to China. Edward Snowden was one of 480,000 private contractors who had the same level of security clearance. Are we really saying that the Russian Secret Service and the Chinese Secret Service didn't get to one of those other 479,999? My contention, and it should be your contention too in supporting this motion, is that the only people who didn't know what the NSA and the GCHQ were actually up to were the British people and the American people. And that is what Edward Snowden said. And remember what we're actually talking about here with metadata. Metadata is not some cozy little record of your phone conversations. It's everything. It's your phone conversations, but it's also every email link. It's also every time you actually get access through a social network, every time you browse on a website. How much can be told, even before you know it, of what your interests actually are? If you, for example, get in touch with Alcoholics Anonymous, you don't know the content of that call, but it's surely telling you something. If you get in touch with the Samaritans, if you go for hours without any contact, maybe you're a manic depressive, you can infer an awful lot from that metadata. And that's precisely why it is so important in a democracy like America or the UK that it should remain private. It's also, frankly, and here let me be a little parochial and stray away from the United States and talk about the UK. It's made a mockery of parliamentary sovereignty, because it's absolutely clear that GCHQ was doing exactly the same in cahoots with the NSA, that the tapping into the hoovering up of this massive amount of data and storage of this massive amount of data was going on both sides of the Atlantic. And it was despite two clear votes in the House of Commons against precisely such mass surveillance. Most recently, we had the Data Communications Bill in draft, came forward, and there was clearly no majority in the House of Commons for that bill. And the joint committee that scrutinised that bill contained two former chief whips for Labour and the Conservatives, both of whom had to admit that they had not been informed until Ed Snowden's revelations that this sort of activity was actually going on, even though the government was trying to get through a draft bill which would have provided some legal base for it. The Intelligence and Security Committee wasn't told. I, when I was a member of the Cabinet, was on the National Security Committee, and we were certainly not told. We still in the UK do not know which minister or Prime Minister actually signed off on this programme. So the idea that somehow there's been any accountability is absolute nonsense. It makes a mockery of parliamentary sovereignty. Now we do require a balance of argument between security and privacy and freedom. But it's my contention that what we have here are security agencies which in their arrogance have decided that they are going to determine the correct balance between security and freedom and privacy, and not the elected representatives of the people, whether they're in the United States or in the UK. And that is not the way we proceed. That is what makes the difference between a society like Britain and the United States, long-standing democracies believing in the rule of law, and societies like Russia or China. And I find it horrifying that we have from the other side the idea in some way that we should be measured by the same standards that we apply to Russia or to China. We are surely better than that. We're defending a tradition of freedom in this country and in the United States, which goes way back to our ancestors, and which would be frankly outrageous were we to allow to slip. It's a trust for us. And part of that tradition is the upholding of the rule of law. And here it is absolutely crucial that we remember what Snowden has done. He has enabled us as democracies, as free people casting our votes in the ballot box, to begin to take the right decisions on our own behalf about what the correct balance to be struck is between security and freedom. And without him, without his exceptionally courageous decision to sacrifice his own life in terms of his lifestyle and everything that he had done, we would not know that information, and frankly not even people in authority would know that information. And if we want and believe in an executive which is accountable to the people, and that is written in the US Constitution, and I wish to hell it was written in ours as well. We don't have one, but I wish we did. Frankly, we ought to make sure that the accountability of the people is absolutely essential. Let me just end on quoting a great American who has already been quoted with a similar quotation this evening, and that's Benjamin Franklin, who of course said, any society that would give up a little liberty to gain a little security will deserve neither and lose both. Let's, as Americans and British, not forget that.